Chalice lighting.
Good morning. My name is Palumbo. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the worship associate today. Join me as we recite our covenant, and my friend Jonah lights our chalice. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to share our strength in fellowship. Thus do we covenant. Please be seated.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome. I am the Reverend Christine Dance. I use she and her pronouns in this sacred space. In this beautiful morning, we celebrate the tapestry of our diversity and honor the boundless love that unites us all. The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix strives to be a spiritual community for our time. This time, whatever this time is, right? A congregation that is theologically diverse, radically inclusive, and justice-centered. Our doors swing wide to embrace all who seek a welcoming place. May our worship today be a source of inspiration, a wellspring of courage, and a call to action. If you are new here, we are so glad you found us. Each Sunday is a little bit different here, so please come back a few times to really get to know us. I have a few announcements. After the service today, at the back table today and next Sunday, your civic engagement team invites you to write a holiday card for an immigrant in a detention center. Your card will likely be the only gift from outside that the person receives this season. And some of you will decorate envelopes like this one, decorated to look like wrapping paper. So it's a small action, a creative action that you can take that can make a big difference. And I want to invite you after this service. A lot of people have been getting comfort from a class called, and now I don't have it at the end, Comfort in Anxious Times. What is the title? Yes. Distressing in Chaotic Times. will be after the service, and that will be in Annex B if you want to be part of that, if you feel chaotic and need some de-stressing. I don't know if that applies to anyone. So now let us draw deeper into the present moment and into our worship. Settle your bodies, open your minds, and release your hearts.
Our opening words are from Nelson Mandela. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. I now invite anyone who would like to come forward for a together time.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Resendez, and I'm the Director of Children's Ministry here at UUC Phoenix. Thank you. I went away for a week, and I came back to applause. That's kind of nice. I have a question for you all, and it's a question I haven't had a chance to ask you in a while. Shall I tell a story? So, once upon a time, a long, long time ago yesterday, there were two amazing valleys. And this story actually comes from a minister named A.J. Tyne, who is an amazing minister and a pretty good storyteller. And I will tell you one thing, it wasn't written by desert people. And as desert people, we have a little bit more knowledge than the other folks who have heard this story. We'll start here. There were two valleys between two mountains. And the valleys were lush and green and beautiful. Because, as desert people, we know, how does water run? Down. And so these valleys filled with water and cottonwoods and great places to plant and fertile soil. And, as happens, they made great places to be villages. Now, one valley was ruled by and taken over as a village by the golden eagles. And these beautiful, massive birds were able to fly over the land and see what the land needed, where it needed extra watering, where they could harvest from, because they had amazing vision and could see the whole picture all at once, especially with their strong, strong wings. They were wise leaders in the village, their wisdom coming from their ability to see all at once and their strength. Now, in the other valley, the leaders were, don't call them pigs, javelina. Now, the javelina's wisdom came because they don't see very well. And they were so good at problem solving and being clever and figuring things out because they were so short-sighted, as we all know. How many of you have had a basketball mistaken for a pumpkin by your neighborhood javelina? And so they were clever, but they were also very compassionate. And their wisdom was in their cleverness and their compassion. And see, these two very beautiful, fertile valleys had what happens to most beautiful, fertile places. People come to them, eventually, of course, drought. Thanks, Johnny. People come to them. So animals from all over came to live in these beautiful valleys. Does anyone else live in a valley that people from all over came to live in? Okay, just checking. So there were all sorts of animals living in both these valleys, not just golden eagles and javelinas, but frogs and ducks and wolves and sheep and lions and tigers and turtles and bears, oh my, came to live in these villages. And each group of leaders, being very wise, was able to make communities of kindness and wealth and provide for everyone, which was pretty amazing considering the diversity of things there. And it all seemed to be going pretty well until the wolves and the sheep started living closer and closer together. And in fact, they lived in the same neighborhoods. And this got a little bit scary for the sheep. So the sheep went to their leaders and said, I know, dear, dear golden eagles, that you all are wise. We are scared because the wolves are our natural predator and they've been eating some of us. And the golden eagles thought about it and thought, well, we need to hear both sides of the story. And they went to the wolves and talked to the wolves about it, and the wolf said, well, golden eagles, we know that you have so much wisdom, and what makes this valley great and what makes you such great leaders is your tolerance and how you accept everyone, and we all are offered the same things. The golden eagles went back to talk to each other, and they thought about it. And they thought, there really is a lot of wisdom when we look at the whole picture, divide everything up equally, that the wolves should be tolerated. They're right. They should be here. And the sheep can stay, and that's fine, but we need to make sure there is space for the wolves. And that was the decision they had made, and that seemed okay to some. And actually, the golden eagles talked to the peregrines and the owls, and all of them sat together and were like, well, the wolves have never bothered me, so this seems fine. Back over in the other village, the village that was led by the javelinas, the exact same thing happened. The wolves went to the javelinas and said, leaders, you all are so wise and so kind, and you've been so tolerant. And we heard that over in that other village there was some controversy, and we want to let you know beforehand. We deserve to stay, and this is our home, and this is our place, and we know that you will be fair. And the javelinas said, what is this about? And went around and talked to everyone. Talked to the goats, talked to the ducks, talked to the peregrines, everyone. And then when they got to the sheep, they found out what it was about. And the sheep said, yeah, to be honest, we're pretty scared. The wolves have been eating some of our people. And that's terrifying. And having had this new information and all the information they collected, the javelina went back, and they stood in that tight little circle they stand in when they're all together so that they can see each other, and had a conversation about it. And they thought, well, the problem here isn't the existence of sheep or wolves. It's that we probably shouldn't eat our neighbors. So maybe what we do is make some rules. Rule number 1, don't eat your neighbors. And that seemed reasonable. And it wasn't about a type of people, whether you were a duck or a cow or a sheep or a wolf. It was about a behavior, right? That seemed to work. And it was a little hard to get people used to it, but that worked for a little while. And to be honest, everyone who hadn't been directly affected felt like it was working great. But what they started to see was that belief trickle down into other places, because you see, the anteaters with that big, big nose of theirs, it's a really good sense of smell, and they didn't want to be in rooms with animals that might possibly be skunks. Because skunks smell, and I can't handle it, and it makes me very upset, and I get a little nervous around them. And so what they asked the javelinas was, can you make sure that anything skunkish, black and white animals, anything with that color blend that might be a skunk, aren't allowed in our spaces and indoors anymore? And the javelinas kind of said, no. Are they eating you? No? Okay. The rule is don't eat your friends. Don't eat your neighbors. But over in the village where the golden eagles ruled, when the anteaters went to talk about the skunks, the golden eagle said, well, let's do this. We'll make a room for you, and you can invite whoever you want in it, and we'll make a room for the animals that might possibly be skunks, and they'll be separate but the same. Separate but equal. And that seemed to work, sort of. Years went on, and people felt like they were prospering. The villages felt like they were going through ups and downs like everyone does, but something was changing. In the village that the javelinas were the leaders in, they saw all sorts of animals come and join them. Geckos, even big, huge monitor lizards, snakes, all sorts of things that wouldn't normally be in a community, but if they followed the rule, don't eat your neighbors, they were welcome. And there was so many different types of animals in that village. Do you know what the best benefit of so many different types of animals in that village? Maybe diversity of thought, maybe new ideas, maybe new music. There were a lot of different restaurants. But in that village that the golden eagles were leaders of, well, the sheep had moved right away. And then the skunks all moved out because that separate but equal thing wasn't working. The raccoons moved out because they were black and white. And actually the anteaters moved out too because they didn't feel like they were fully getting what they had wanted out of it. And they had been promised that they would get what they wanted. And so that village became just pretty much golden eagles and wolves. Whereas the village next door, in that next beautiful valley, flourished and flourished and flourished, and had such diversity and such good food that it became a center for celebration and joy and rest, and it was known as an amazing and wonderful place, even though it didn't really look any different than that other valley next door. Yes?
Where did the other animals go?
Like the sheep and all of the ones that moved out? Well, let's think about that. Where do we think the other animals all went to? The other valley, the other village. What were you going to say, Bella? Whoville, is that what you said? Oh, Whoville, okay. They opened a co-op somewhere else. They just migrated completely. Yeah, but they didn't go back to that village, did they? Yeah. So with that, let's think about our own villages. And let's think about what it means when we tolerate based on the wisdom of strength and overall vision versus when we build our tolerance based on seeing closely, being in relationship, and having compassion. Thank you.
Each week, we split our offering between this congregation and an organization that shares our values. For November, our Share the Plate partner is ACES Consortium. Consortium, yeah. An adverse childhood experience is trauma that takes place in a child's life before 18. ACES knows that adverse childhood experiences can last a lifetime, but they don't have to. This organization engages professionals and agencies to increase awareness about the causes, effects, and opportunities to mitigate the impact of ACEs in our community. For all that you give, we are so grateful. Ushers, thank you for your willing hands in passing the plate.
We recognize that our lives are interconnected. Part of our communal journey is sharing our significant milestones, our joys, and our sorrows. You can put a note in the chat in Zoom, and if you want us to read your joy or sorrow next week, there are cards right there at the small table at the back of the sanctuary. Today, Jan Kaplan has a joy. Jan says, please welcome today Lena Korpo, my high school foreign exchange sister from Helsinki, Finland. If you're willing, you can stand up. Jan says, Lena and I shared our senior years together at Davenport, Iowa Central High School and now have been friends and sisters for 54 years, having visited each other many times. Husband Tapio elected to geek out at Home Depot and Costco today with Helen, but you can welcome him too. Welcome, Lena. We are so glad that you are here. We have a couple of concerns or sorrows. Victoria Myers says, I'm lifting up my friend Linda, who was diagnosed with cancer and will start chemo soon. Sending love to Linda and all those who are caring for her. And Susan Scott wanted to let us know, Susan, who normally sings in our choir, isn't here today because her outdoor kitchen caught fire last night. And she was up all night with the police and firemen. So thankfully, the gas container was empty, or it would have been much worse. So just scary, scary times with all of that. I think that is all we've got. Just acknowledging that we've been having problems with YouTube lately. It's not us, it's YouTube. But if you have been trying to access that, we're working on that. May our joys and our sorrows, those named and those held in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts help us draw closer and care for each other. So now I invite you to a time of meditation and prayer. From your seats, we are going to sing "Guide My Feet," an old spiritual. As we get to each verse, I'm going to be sharing a common prayer in between. Feel free to close your eyes throughout if you know the song or it feels right for you, and share with me in the prayer that we have together. Oh, my soul, at times the challenges I face are too much. Too much illness, too much struggle, too much conflict between family and neighbors, too much suffering in the world, on our screens, and out of sight, but we still know it is happening, and whatever shall we do? Can I bear the weight of it all? It is hard to be a human, especially a soft-hearted human in these times. Spirit of love, will you guide me? Soul, at times I feel alone, isolated, even if there are people around me. It can be hard to share my inner world with others or to let them help me. But as we sing together, I feel others' presence. And I know that together we have enough caring to go around for everyone, including me. Gathered community, will you sing with me? Oh, my soul, sometimes I am just weary. When it's hard to get out of bed in the dark morning, hard to face difficult tasks, hard to lift my feet or open my heart, I know I may need rest and fortitude, even as the race continues. I may need to refill the well within me. Rest is a gift that I will try to allow myself to have when I need it. My needs are important, and I deserve rest. Oh, my soul, you can rest. When I feel nourished with song, I grow stronger. When I have felt the presence of caring community around me, I feel more able to use my own power. When I have given my body and spirit the rest I need, I am renewed. And yes, my soul, when the light grows, and mercy is the light that is growing day by day like a green, growing plant, I am ready to rise. In power and beauty, I return to the world, and I continue my race for love and joy. Amen. Blessed be.
Hello, my name is Blake Rushing, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm one of the worship associates here at UUCP. Thank you. Transgender Day of Remembrance is Wednesday, November 20th. We take the time today in our service to honor and acknowledge the transgender people in the U.S. who have lost their lives to violence this year. With the threat of violence towards transgender folks only growing, we come together to mourn our sacred siblings that were torn from us far too soon. I identify as a transgender woman, so I'm sure you will forgive my emotion on this particular topic. I'm having a lot of feelings about this topic right now, and I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room feeling the weight that the violence against the transgender community has brought us. Let us feel these things together as a community of gender-diverse, beloved people. I'm just gonna say it. I've been pretty sad recently. I've cried a lot, and honestly, I plan to cry a lot more. I understand the important, essential place that each of these individuals had in their community, in my community. And I understand the giant vacuum that is left in their absence. I understand the pain that ripples through the community with each of them is taken from us. I know that each of these people played an integral role amongst their friends and loved ones, and I am wrecked to know that that role is empty. The transgender community is left wanting with each loss, and we are all so tired of wanting. I'm angry. These injustices are undeserved. Children, mothers, fathers, partners, loved ones of many titles, all killed just for identifying as transgender. I want to scream. I want to pitch a fit. I want to make all the noise in the world to drown out the hateful speech that has only fueled the unjust and unrighteous deaths of my sisters, brothers, and beautiful siblings everywhere else on the gender spectrum. I'm afraid. I see myself in all of these people. I see my own vulnerability. I see the vulnerability of countless friends. I see reason to be concerned for my own safety and for all the transgender folks I love so deeply. I fear losing a loved one. I fear losing my own life. When I turned 30, I was told that I had become an elder in the transgender community. Violence is a big reason for this. Simply put, not many transgendered people get to live out long lives. It scares me that 30 is old enough to be declared an elder in my community. Our yellow brick road seems to almost always end in a red finish line, one way or another. This morning, Reverend Christine is going to read the names of the 29 transgender people who were killed by violence in the U.S. this year. I feel it's important to mention that there are so many more worldwide and so many other transgender people who have lost their lives to suicide, poor medical attention, and countless other social injustices. We hold a place in our heart for not only these lives, but so many more. We remember them today by saying their names and seeing their beautiful faces, and we will remember them tomorrow through our newly inspired actions.
San Coleman, she was 48 years old. Hani Daniels, she was 37 years old. Kasim Omar, she was 29 years old. Red, also known as Barbie, she was 25 years old. Tai Vian Lathan, she was 24 years old. Vanity Williams, also known as Chanel, she was 34 years old. Dylan Gurley, she was 20 years old. Monique Brooks, she was 49 years old. Kenji Spurgeon, she was 23 years old. Shannon Boswell, she was 30 years old. Polly Lakins, she was 14 years old. Liara Desai, she was 35 years old. Tay Dior Thomas, she was 17 years old. Jaslyn Johnson, she was 18 years old. Keita B., she was 46 years old. Andrea Doria dos Passos, she was 37 years old. Star Brown, she was 28 years old. River Nevea Goddard, they were 17 years old. T. Arnold, he was 36 years old. Meraxis Medina, she was 24 years old. Alex Franco, he was 21 years old. Diamond Cherish Brigman, she was 26 years old. Reina Hernandez, she was 54 years old. Africa Paria Garcia, she was 25 years old. Sasha Williams, she was 36 years old. Kitty Monroe, she was 43 years old. Yela or Robert Clark Jr., they were 45 years old. Michelle Henry, she was 25 years old. And Righteous TK or Chevy Hill, he was 35 years old.
We remember them today and every day through our action and inaction. Amen.
Choir, you are so amazing. Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful gift. I have a tale of two cousins. Let me tell you about them because you may have these cousins too. Brad is the son of my father's brother. He is about 6 years younger than me, and I remember when he was born. We were quite close when we were young. We went camping with our grandparents, and his mom and my mom were very close. Basically, both my father and my uncle both married just someone like their mother. My grandmother and her two daughter-in-laws were almost carbon copies and dear friends. Brad grew up in Flint, Michigan, and still lives there. I know that he voted for Trump 3 times. He follows me on social media, and he knows me for the liberalist lib that I am. But without discussing it, we have agreed to never talk about politics. We send each other birthday greetings, and whenever we talk, we end with, "Love you, cuz." And then there's my cousin Julie. She's the daughter of my father's other brother. We didn't know each other as well when we were growing up, but she was closest to me in my age, so I felt a good kinship with her. She became an accountant like my father, and there was a close bond between them. She lives in Texas with her husband, and she is a die-hard Trump fan. She goes to all the rallies, hosts Trump parties, and has cutouts of him in her home. We have tried to talk, but we have not found a way to make that work. She stopped following me on social media, and I was slightly relieved. Again, without discussing it, we both acknowledged that this was going to be too difficult of a relationship, and we are mostly estranged now. Do any of you have any family members that fall into any of those categories? So this week is Thanksgiving. All across America, the Thanksgiving table is going to be awkward. With an election as divisive as this one, with a media landscape that delivers radically different messages, with the genuine fear and dread of millions of people, and with the recency of these emotions, I can predict that fewer households will be able to end it with just "love ya, cuz." Besides the concern you've shared about the future of our country and our values, the question of how to manage family and friends is the thing that many of you have talked to me about the most. Some of you are on tenuous ice that could break any time, and some of you are grieving relationships that have been severed because of this divide. This is the great paradigm of being a Unitarian Universalist in these times. How do we live our values of equity, justice, and interdependence with love at the center and still tolerate those who voted for what we perceive as exactly the opposite? I'm going to unpack some of this for us, and whether it applies to your Thanksgiving table, or whether it applies to neighbors, or just what you're feeling in your own heart, I want you to think about how tolerance and inclusion fits in your life, in this congregation, and in our wider society. I am unpacking this with several words of my friend, Reverend A.J. Van Tyne. You may remember A.J. from a joint service that he and I did on Pokemon during the pandemic. Anyone remember the Pokemon service? It was epic. I am grateful to him for stretching my perspective on this topic. Well, I already knew enough about Pokemon. It wasn't on Pokemon, it's this one. Here's the thing. So being welcoming and inclusive isn't as simple as welcoming every single person, no questions asked, no boundary set, no limits of behavior or guidance of what it means to be together. As Charles Vogel says in his book, The Art of Community, if everyone in the world belongs in your community, this means your community cannot be distinguished from no community. Take that in. It's important to remember that, as demonstrated in the fable that Katie said earlier, sometimes what no community really looks like is no safety. The Golden Eagles welcomed and tolerated everyone as a matter of absolute principle, which meant that no one was safe from the predators. So boundaries are good things, or at least they can be when employed in the service of our highest values. Charles Vogel defines boundaries as the recognized demarcation between insiders and outsiders. The boundary should be more about making the inside space safe for insiders than about keeping outsiders out. Where there's a boundary, insiders feel more confident that they share values and that they understand one another better. Often, at least in religions derived from the Abrahamic tradition, a creedal statement or doctrine is used as the shared defining feature of who is in and who is out. But we as Unitarian Universalists are a non-creedal religion, and we don't have such a doctrine to say, if you agree with this, if you believe in this, you're in. Otherwise, if you're not, you don't, you're not. That's one of the things we love about being Unitarian Universalists. We like it that way when it comes to matters of theology or religious belief. In the words of Reverend Alex Jensen, if you cling to prejudice or oppressive views of others, if you in any way believe that someone else is somehow inferior or anything lesser than human, you won't be a good UU. We want to be that inclusive, and we need boundaries. Another colleague of mine, the Reverend Gretchen Haley, puts it this way: instead of "we welcome everyone," we would be better to say, "we welcome everyone who welcomes everyone." Right? Clear differentiation. And there is a line somewhere, even within our congregations. It's more complicated with families who aren't UU, and I am not here to tell you what boundaries you need to figure out with your family, your friends, your social media folks. Only you can do that with all of these multiple implications of considerations. And no decision has to be permanent. And every decision isn't reliant only on you. It takes more than one person often to build that relationship. The paradox of how to be inclusive and yet how to have boundaries exists in our wider world and probably always has. In 1945, the Austrian Jewish philosopher Karl Popper, who had to flee the Nazi regime, wrote a book called The Open Society and Its Enemies. And in it, he described the concept of the tolerance paradox. The tolerance paradox is this: unlimited tolerance would lead to the disappearance of tolerance. We should therefore claim, in the name of tolerance, the right not to tolerate the intolerant. If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed, and tolerance with them. Did you get all that? Okay. We'll put a quote of it on the Facebook page. Basically, if we tolerate everything, then we don't have a society. We have to not tolerate the intolerant in order for us to have both safe and tolerant communities. Popper went on to argue that if intolerant ideologies were allowed unchecked expression, they could exploit open society values to erode or destroy tolerance itself through authoritarian, I can do that, erode or destroy tolerance itself through authoritarian or oppressive practices. This was written in 1945, but does it sound familiar right now? So what does that look like for the holiday season coming up, your life, your interactions? Now, I am not one of those, if you voted for him, unfriend me now kind of folks, even though I know their vote may directly impact my rights and definitely will impact the rights of those that I love. I do believe that there are some voters who delight in supporting Trump, and there are others who voted holding their noses. Putting everyone in the same bucket for me others them, just like how we are asking not to be othered. And it cuts off the doorway to relationship and change. Sometimes we liberals can conflate intolerance with ostracization and blocking. We need to be real clear about what's an unmovable boundary, which might be physical violence or abuse, for instance, and what is something that shouldn't be ignored but could still leave that doorway open. And your line of where that is will depend on you. What is physical violence? We just saw in our Trans Day of Remembrance. Where that line is for some of that community may be different than mine as a lesbian woman, which may be different than yours as whatever it is that you identify as. But it also doesn't mean that you don't have to make strong boundaries based on your own family and friend situation. Whatever decisions you make with your relationships, we cannot tolerate intolerance. I think many of us, especially if we were socialized as white, we prioritize the comfort of others over speaking up over intolerance. We proactively cede the ground to the intolerant before it is demanded. I won't be doing that. And what I would ask for you to consider is how you can practice naming the intolerance. Maybe directly, maybe creatively, but to live your values out loud with courageous love, acting as the javelina and protecting those who are most affected. I suggest that we spend our energy on protecting and defending those who are threatened and have less power in the system, rather than trying to justify or find common ground in those who are creating the threats or the oppressive acts. And if any of my building common grounds requires me to deny the impact of this election or to tolerate any of the justifications, shenanigans, or harmful messaging, I will not. Basically, I want to make racism awkward again. I want to call out people who say they agree to disagree on trans or gay issues, because disagreeing with the validity of someone's identity and the rights and services they deserve as human beings is discrimination and intolerance, not disagreement. I will call that out. I want to stand up for the worthiness and dignity of all people, especially when they are called illegals or compared to animals. We don't have to be jerks about it, but we do need to be courageous. We can be courageous with creativity. I've seen some creative responses. I saw a very inventive story this week about a trans teen girl who had been on the cheerleading squad for a while. When she came out, the other girls in the squad made an agreement that whatever boy made fun of her would never get a date. And then I love this quote of it: "If you think that's not the most metal girl alliance ever, you can sit down." There's another trend starting called 4B. It's shorthand for 4 Korean words that I know I'm going to mispronounce: bihon, bishlusan, bionne, and bikesu, which translate to no marriage, no childbirth, no dating, and no sex. Yep, that'll change things. But that will probably not apply to your Thanksgiving dinner this week. Let's try some simpler approaches. Gina Hatzies, who is a social media influencer and a journalist, advises these 4 replies, which can be said with love, but also clear boundaries. First one is, "What an odd thing to say out loud." Okay, I want you to turn to your neighbor right now and I want you to practice. I want you to repeat after me. What an odd thing to say out loud. Odd thing to say out loud. Okay, good, good. Did you do that well? You could say that, the whole sentence, right? Okay, here's another one. Here's another one. I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, "I'm surprised you feel comfortable saying that." Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, here's the third one. They're on the same line, right? They're on the same, and you can follow it up with as much courageous as you want, but this is a fabulous way to kind of open the door to that. Let's try that one. "Did you mean to share that with the group?" Go ahead, try it. Try it. Or, if you want to catch them in their own trap and make them squirm, try this one. "Would you mind repeating that?" Say it, try it with each other. Try it. So I hear the laughter and the energy, but what is that doing? It's empowering, right? And it is calling something out without being a total jerk, but being very clear on where you stand, right? It's important that these responses, this immune response, we don't have to be overly zealous or punitive. We don't have to stand at the table, rip off the tablecloth, and go into a righteous mode. The best comment should be oriented to how can we reimagine this so that everyone feels welcome, rather than who do we need to exclude. And then if we need to exclude, we can know why, when, and how. It's because our faith and our values call us to leave room for people to make mistakes, to learn, to grow, and even room for us to make mistakes, acknowledging that I myself might be the one who needs to grow and change. But not on my values, because those aren't changing. It is the behaviors, like Katie has said, it's the behaviors and not necessarily the people themselves that create intolerance. In the fable, the wolves are a metaphor for humans who hold certain beliefs about the worthiness of other humans, who exhibit certain behaviors that cause harm and exclusion, and sometimes even extermination of those who are deemed different. We can imagine an epilogue to the fable that Katie told, where some of the wolves living in the village of the Golden Eagles genuinely decide to give up their predatory ways and live in peace with all of the other animals in the Javelina village. Maybe this is such a radical transformation of the heart that these animals end up being called dogs instead of wolves. Just as we might use different language to talk about an ex-Klansman who is working hard to make reparations for past deeds and help to de-radicalize young men, than we would use to describe an active and enthusiastic member of the Ku Klux Klan. Because this is the transformation that I am still holding on for our country and our world. We often say that radical inclusion is the goal of drawing the circle of love wider, and certainly we need to draw our circle wider in the U.S. We can love and hope to draw the circle wider while still naming the behaviors that would seek to draw it smaller. We will have courageous conversations in naming the tolerance, and we will say, pass the turkey, but without the sides of racism, misogyny, and transphobia. Now that's a holiday meal I'd like to have. So might it be. Before we close with our final hymn, we remind you to reach out with somebody new that you haven't seen. We still have a bunch of newcomers here, some that were here last week and some other new ones. We hope that you stay around so we can meet you. Our exploration hour activities for children and adults start at noon. Will be listed on the screen behind me, and our coffee hour is right through those doors onto the patio and the Johnson room. Now, Benji, let us close with a song of determination and unity. Please rise in body or spirit.
Like the
with gratitude for the choir, for Gio and Blake. Thank you for this beautiful service. Our closing words are from the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are oh so very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in peace, go in love.